Hey everybody, today is Monday, December 11th, 2023. Coming up on the show today, from Poor Things, editor Yorgos Mavropsaridis.
Honestly, it was not a good experience in the sense that the job you're required to do there is mainly, the shooting stopped because it rained. Can we make an edit of the scene to see if it's okay? It's not creative. He doesn't edit during the shooting. He respects the continuity of time and space. The actor has all the time to have all his lines in one setup and then another setup, even a close-up. Lanthimos hates ADR, as a matter of fact. It's, this idea of Godard that you cannot separate the body from the soul. So we try never to use ADR.
Yes, all that and more on this edition of The Rough Cut. Well, greetings, true believers in the editorial arts. So nice to have you on board for another episode of our little adventure in post-production. And an adventure is just what we have at hand. We are off to Athens, Greece. Unfortunately, not literally, but rather through the miracle of the internet, to speak to editor Yorgos Mavropsaridis about his new film, Poor Things. Once again, Yorgos is collaborating with another Yorgos. Hey, maybe that's how they found each other. Perhaps there's a Grecian society of filmmakers named Yorgos that meets regularly. Anyway, Yorgos Lanthimos is the director that Yorgos Mavropsaridis has worked with for over 20 years. Most notably and most recently on the films The Lobster and The Favorite, the latter bringing Yorgos an Ace Eddie Award in the feature film editing category. Poor Things is an adaptation from a book of the same name, although the book is a little different. But what's similar is that it's about, please talk amongst yourselves while I pull up the Wikipedia page, here we go, about a young woman named Bella, played by Emma Stone, who is brought back to life by her guardian, the scientist Dr. Godwin Baxter, and he's played by Willem Dafoe. Baxter does this by implanting the brain of a baby inside the skull of a dead woman and bringing her to life a la Frankenstein. I know, stay with me. Initially naive, and who wouldn't be with a baby's brain, Bella is eager to learn about the world around her, albeit under Baxter's protection. Wanting to see more than what he will allow, she runs off with Duncan Wedderburn, a slick and debauched lawyer, and together they travel across continents. Finally, free from the prejudices of her times, Bella demands equality and liberation. Yes, it is a wild ride of a movie thematically and visually. Not something you would likely hand to an editor still getting their feet under them. You need a seasoned vet, a pro, perhaps the guy who won an Eddie Award for The Favorite. And we are going to meet that guy and talk all about what took place to bring Bella Baxter to life in just a moment. But first, we're going to give a tip of the cap to the nice and very helpful folks who sponsor this podcast. None other than Extreme Music. Ever since 1997, Extreme Music has been providing storytellers with the best in production audio. Great tracks from incredible musicians and composers. Too many brilliant artists to name here, but you can see for yourself over at extrememusic.com. And once you're there, you will be greeted by a seemingly endless catalog of tracks to set any kind of scene and to suit any kind of story you need to tell. You can use their powerful search engine to find just the right tracks based on the terms you give to them, or if you can't put your thoughts into words, it happens to me all the time, then just give Extreme Music a reference track and they will do the rest to get you ones like it. Whichever way you find them, these tracks come in different links and can be customized right down to the instrumentation so that you get just what you need. Plus, all that licensing stuff can be taken care of right there online, or if you want someone to talk to, you can connect with one of their reps all over the world to help you with the process. Extreme Music is the best in the business and the only name you need to know when it comes to all your production audio needs. So for your next movie or TV show, make sure to check out extrememusic.com. All right, time to set sail for Greece so we can catch up with Poor Things editor Yorgos Mavropsaridis. Excellent. Well, thank you for doing this.
Thank you for inviting me.
You know, with Poor Things, once again, you're working from a screenplay written by Tony McNamara, who co-wrote The Favorite.
Mm-hmm.
But this time, it's a screenplay adapted from a book. Did you read the original book at all to prepare for the film, or watch any films that Yorgos might have suggested for reference?
Well, I did read it, not for any other reason, but just I was curious to see what they did, and I believe they did a fantastic job in the adaptation. The book is different. I mean, of course, it's about Bella Baxter, but it's narrated through letters sent, and also the characters are, especially Godwin Baxter, is a bit different. He's more willing to be with her. So there's an antagonism between Max and Godwin Baxter towards Bella, which does not exist in the film. The character of Godwin Baxter is transformed to a benevolent monster. you would say, yes.
When you did read the screenplay, what was your reaction to it? And did you have any notes or questions for Yorgos?
Well, the only thing, because I was given the script before, the only note I think I remember I made was that, the character played by Margaret Qualley was named Victoria, and I thought, maybe that would be confusing for the audience because Victoria Blessington was the woman from where Bella Baxter came. So Yorgos changed it to Felicity. So that was my only contribution.
There have been, I'll call them superficial comparisons to Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. But once you see the movie, you see that there are bigger themes at play, and how Bella Baxter is created is really secondary to how she recreates herself. And I wonder what Yorgos said to you about the themes that he wanted to explore and what he wanted to say with this film.
Mainly it was this peculiar, curious idea of a woman with a baby's brain, and how would that feel when she starts having her sexual appetites, being, as a matter of fact, a teenager, right? But she's in an older woman's body. He was interested in that perception of, in a sense, a young woman having experiencing all this, not only this, of course, not only the sexual, but the need to know the world. And of course, there was no time for her to have all these restrictions we have in our civilization, right? She's very pure. She's a pure being, experiencing everything as it comes, with no hindrance because of, this, you must do this, you must do that. The only obstacle for her is Godwin Baxter, but she easily overcomes that when she says, I will run away, It's a character that we haven't seen before. It's so open to experiences, so open to learning, because she goes through a lot of stages also learning. For example, when she's in the cruiser, in 1 minute she doesn't know what a cynic is, and after a day she recites something. No, Diogenes the cynic said, "You're standing in my sun." So she learns very fast. And the main theme is Bella Baxter and how she develops.
She is evolving. 1 minute she knows one thing or doesn't know something, the next minute she does. And for you as an editor, was that something you had to be careful of in the cutting room, where Bella should be intellectually at that point in the film?
In a sense, we had to find it in the editing room as they found it in the shooting, because there was a lot of improvisation. For example, the breakfast scene. The first cut, I played around a lot because there were a lot of options. Like in one option, she climbed up the table, teasing Godwin Baxter or doing other funny stuff. I had to go through all this experience. And then in the end, because, the length of the whole film was important, we had to keep the basic things to give us the idea of a character being a baby in the beginning and then developing and then going after him when he goes out. He goes out for his lecture, shouting, God, and then with this funny animal walking. And then in the next minute, she's being herself, she's young, or once he's examining her. Yes, we did have to develop, but in the end, as you know, all this had to be shortened. We had to make like a kind of montage sequence when Max writes down her development and everything to reach the next stages. And by the time she meets Duncan Wedderburn, I guess he's about 12 years old. And then, she decides to go like a 14-year-old girl would go. And then she develops more. And when she goes to Portugal in Lisbon, and later in the end, we see her develop into a full-grown woman, very responsible, very, having opinion about everything, having a marriage which is not romantic. It's a practical marriage. The thing that they agree up together is that people can be fixed. We can make human beings better. So that's the basis of their marriage, a creative collaboration.
There's a lot to talk about, obviously, in terms of this very unique story, but the story itself is not the only unique thing about the movie. The visual language and the images are quite something to see as well. But to talk about those, we should start discussing the practical aspects of how you made this movie. I believe filming began in August of 2021 at a film studio in Budapest.
Yes.
How long did principal photography go, and where were you cutting during the production phase?
In Athens, as a matter of fact, we had a very good team in Budapest, and the negative, we had the rushes the next day, the black and white and the color. The only negative that came a bit later, 3 or 4 days later, was the Ektachrome, because he shot in Ektachrome as well, all these shots with a LED screen behind. And principal photography took about 60 days. There was a lot of material. There was a lot of improvisation. I was, enjoying what I was doing. But, all assembly is an assembly. You know that it's just a way for you to learn the material, to see all the variations that exist or the possibilities that exist. And then, yes, after they finished, Yorgos, we met about 2 weeks after shooting, and we didn't see the whole film. It was not possible. It was about 4 hours. So we took it section by section. Usually the way we work with Yorgos is that we meet and, we see like 20 or 30 minutes of how long he can bear, because he always feels bad about the first cut. And, he gives me notes. Like, for example, if I can make an example, like the first shot of when we see Godwin Baxter, we had about 10 shots and, the camera, of course, had to be smooth. But the basic note was he has to be sweet. He has to be, a master, but with a nice heart. So that was a decision. And also it gives me an idea of how to proceed, of course, with developing the characters. And that's how we usually work. And then we came back, I took about maybe 4 or 5 days, 1 week, and then we met again. He's a director that, I admire a lot. And I was impressed as well by the aesthetics of what I saw. It was many steps ahead. Also, it was his first studio film, like everything was constructed, right? And that was about it. I mean, he gives me time. He creates the right environment for us to work creatively. There's no outside interference, whatever we do. And, we reach a point when, after a long process, to be able to start showing to 5 or 6 people we trust. Just to be there in the room with them and experience what we see with them and, make changes and stuff like that. And we finished, I think it took us about 6 months, the edit.
I think anybody would be happy to be editing in Athens, Greece. But do you like to be on location, or is it better for you as an editor to be removed from production?
It's much better to be removed. I only went, when we did Lobster, I was in Ireland with him in Cork. And honestly, it was not a good experience in the sense that you are influenced by the environment. Your opinion or your aesthetics of what you see gets influenced by the environment. And, if you go to the shooting, and also the job you're required to do there is mainly, the shooting stopped because it rained. Can we make an edit of the scene to see if it's okay? It's not creative in a sense. And it took me a bit back to what I wanted to do. I had to find myself again. I had to find my pace to do the work we usually do. But assembly is an assembly. It's much better not to be in the set, as a matter of fact, for me.
So that cutting room in Athens, when you start to take a big project on like this, as you said, first studio film for Yorgos, what do you do to prepare? How do you like to set up your cutting room? What is it you need in that cutting room with you?
Honestly, what we do is what we used to do when we worked, like for example in DOGTOOTH. A simple thing, like we did rent a place for this. We didn't have a working place. Now for the other film we were working, Lanthimos has his own office, let's say, which it's fixed, with a big screen and projector and everything. Just we had this plasma TV, very big one, an iMac, and an assistant. That's it. Nothing more. But the assistant is very capable in technical matters, so all the technical matters he could solve easily. It's very easy now to get your material from wherever you work, with Aspera. And I have to tell you that Yorgos is very particular about how we see the film when we edit. So it's color corrected already. The colors that we see later, of course, they are much better, a bit better, but the idea is there, and everything is there. And when we work, my assistant does a lot of work in the sound, because we need to hear and understand what is going on there. The carriages around and the atmosphere. we fixed that a lot. And also all the visual effects he had to do, even if it was done in the Avid or in After Effects, they had to be done, or the rails have to be taken away, some skies to be added, the animals, we had to find the right animals because they were shot, right? They were not CGI. So, of course, we had to find the combination of the shots, and then we gave them to the people in the VFX. But we have a great team, and also we can send them some work before the edit finishes. So can you please do that? And they do it. And also sometimes even in the sound, we send it to Johnny Byrne. Please, Johnny, there's an idea to try here. Can you do something with the sound design? So yeah, we have it during the edit. And also, of course, we had the music.
So knowing that emphasis on atmosphere for monitoring sound in your cutting room, do you like to work with just stereo or left, center, right, or 5-1? How do you like to monitor in the cutting room?
For the cutting room, it's simple. It has to be stereo. But all the atmospheres have to be there. The dialogue has to be clean. You know, what is going on in the background has to be added. So we are entering the film worlds already in the cutting room. And we like to see it. You know, also, you know, there was this fantastic equipment. We used Blackmagic little box that shows you exactly what is there. So you don't have to calibrate your plasma or whatever. And it's great.
Philosophically, for you as an editor, do you approach the job as my role is to focus on creating the best story, and I don't need to do temp visual effects or temp sound design, you know, other than the things that you might give to your assistant? Is that your approach, or do you think, no, I do need to do some basic color grading, some basic effects, some basic sound design?
Well, yes, it has to be done because Lanthimos doesn't like to see it and imagining how it would be. We have to be in that world. So we do add some sounds, also some scenes, not so much on this film, but mainly in the favorite were edited with the sound in mind. So we had to have the sound to create this atmosphere. Or, you know, when Bella goes out for the first time, you know, looking at the space, you know, the roofs of London, we had to feel this atmosphere.
So you just reminded me of a question that I was going to ask later, but I think I'll bring it up now. You've mentioned Godwin Baxter a few times, played by Willem Dafoe. Willem has a lot of prosthetics on his face to create the character of Godwin Baxter. Did that hinder his delivery of dialogue at all, so that you had to do a lot of ADR for him, or were we able to use the production audio?
Not at all. Lanthimos hates ADR, as a matter of fact. It's, you know, this idea of Godard that you cannot separate the body from the soul. So we try never to use ADR. In this film, we didn't have to because it was in a sound studio, the dialogue was clean. But even in more difficult circumstances, I remember a shot in The Sacred Deer, for example, which was under a bridge and the sound was very difficult. We had to use the sync sound.
Poor Things was shot on film. I believe The Favorite was shot on film as well, but The Lobster was shot digitally.
Yes.
Was there a specific reason Yorgos wanted to shoot Poor Things on film?
Well, he wanted to shoot film after the budget got better. He always wanted to shoot film, right? I mean, Lobster was more low budget, so couldn't afford it. Otherwise, he would shoot in negative. He always, even when we were working just before our film, like the first film we did together, it was 16 millimeters, Kineta. DOGTOOTH was film as well, and anamorphic. So it was a matter of aesthetics for him to use film all the time.
Does shooting film affect the number of cameras that he uses or how much footage he shoots?
Not on this one. I mean, there were scenes that he used 2 cameras at the most, not more. But no, the takes that he does are the same number, like 12 to 12 shots, take some time from one shot. And the setup is usually 4, 5, maybe 7 setups. No, he does. You know, it was a big budget film for us, and the negative was, of course, he does a lot of. You know, his decisions are basically aesthetic. Like, for example, he does a lot of research about the lens he will use and what kind of negative. Like, for example, the Ektachrome was for particular scenes, and the other negative for the other scenes, and the black and white for the beginning. This gothic atmosphere. So it's mainly aesthetic reasons that dictate how it's going to be shot.
Would you say that he gives you a lot of different places for you to go if you need to cut, or is he very specific to the script that he's working from?
Oh no, he doesn't edit during the shooting. He respects the continuity of time and space. The actor has all the time to have all his lines in one setup and then another setup, even a close-up, with a slight maybe track in. We have all the expressions, so you can understand also his complicated movements. Like, for example, he tried a lot of new ideas on this one, like, apart from the usual ones, apart from the fisheye and all the other, almost all of the scenes had this opportunity to use, but of course we didn't use it. And also this zoom out and track out and lateral at the same time. You have a lot of coverage this way, and his decoupage is very clever. It gives you many ideas, but of course, we try to be simple. We try not to do a lot of cutting whenever it's not needed, and then we do it when it's needed. So there are long shots sometimes, and then followed by montage sequence, and this game between the edit and no edit.
We talked about production. How long did post-production take?
We edited for about 6 months, and then during that time already some of the VFX had to be sent and tried, all these combinations of the animals. And I think we finished the last DCP we watched on a big screen. It was only me and Yorgos. That was about a month before Venice.
You already talked about some of the very interesting visuals in the film, the fisheye and the black and white and the color. I'd like to talk a little bit about the reasons those techniques were employed. For example, the color and the black and white, which I was not aware that he shot color and black and white, that it wasn't a post-process kind of thing. But what was the reasoning behind when to go to color or when to go to black and white?
I think the basic reason was that the first part of the film, which has this gothic atmosphere, should be in black and white. And then when we go with Bella to discover the world, there's this explosion of color. It's not just color, it's an explosion of color and aesthetics. That was the basic idea. Of course, we did a slight change. Like, for example, there were two options to start with the black and white and Bella playing in the piano and meeting them there. Or there was the other option of, seeing somebody falling from the bridge. So that was this fantastic shot taken from behind that, we used this music to follow her up to her close-up of the back of her head, and then she falls. That we thought it would create a mystery and expectation for the audience, and then it was a nice way to use the title "Poor Things" with some Chris Marks artistic experiments to indicate a falling of a body artistically, and then to see Bella. And then, of course, it would create a very good opposition between when Godwin Baxter reveals to Max what happened, to have black and white and a color intercutting together between two atmospheres. And then the Ektachrome was also for aesthetic reasons, for technical reasons. It was this LED screen behind, and I thought it was a good match between, to make it not realistic, not to try to be realistic, but to create an aesthetic difference between this part and the other parts of the color.
And how about the fisheye lens? That was employed at various times. What was the reasoning behind that?
It's his style, but I can only answer on to where we use it, because I had the opportunity to use it in many sets. But for example, I always try to find reasons. Like, for example, the first one we used, it was after the close-up of Godwin Baxter. So I thought, that might be a nice point of view of him looking at the things. Or some other times when you want to show something to the audience, like it's looking through a keyhole, when there's a top shot of Bella Baxter saying to him, let's sleep together, and he avoids that, to see that through a keyhole. So there are different reasons all the time to use it. Or sometimes when there's some not so realistic happening in the dance, for example, when Duncan hits the other guy and then we cut to this big fisheye. I thought it created a good pace and presentation to the scene. You must understand that Lanthimos likes the form a lot, right? And the edit is not like descriptive. We need to find ways to make the telling of the tale interesting. And so this is our approach.
The camera itself is very active. When there's a lot of movement within camera like that, does that make it more of a challenge to edit or to find the place that you want to cut?
It makes an extremely good challenge, right? I like to be challenged, so I always liked the way Lanthimos worked, because when I met him, I was already an established editor in mainstream films, but he presented me with a new way of seeing films and also a new way of trying to formulate his language. And I could see the camera is the consciousness of the director who experiences what is happening there, right? That's the way we see it. It's not so much descriptive as, it transports you in a sense to the inner world of the film, not to the exterior, but to the inside of the film. And this style, we used it a lot. His style, slow motion, and he likes to shoot some scenes in slow motion. He's done it in our other films, and it's always fun for me to play around and find the right small moment to create it.
So where was most of the VFX work in Poor Things? You mentioned the Ektachrome, choosing that format for the way it worked with the set. But beyond that, just what things were you doing in visual effects?
Basically, all the fixing of the skies, for example, because we were in a studio, we had to fix all the skies. There was a lot of rails that had to be taken out, but mainly it was the animals, which were shot, in real time. They were not CGI. So, for example, this shot that Bella goes after Godwin Baxter shouting, God, and he goes, we had, a guy walking with a dog and a guy walking with a duck and, maybe a cat. So we had to find, or when Max is lying and we have on top of him chicken, pig, there were many combinations like a cat and a duck, and we had to find the right combination to see that it matches somehow. So, and then we would send that to the VFX people union in London to to work it properly and make the stitches that we couldn't do because it had to be stitched, right? It's not like and everything. But the only for the edit it was to find the right combination. And when she feeds the animals, there were a lot of animals around. We could have a lot of different options, but yes, we had to find the ones that we liked and that were more funny or more relevant, or they could be made properly, right? So that was the main work, I believe. And no, the Ektachrome didn't. There was no. It was shot as it is. I mean, the LED screen was already there, so we just had to add some. For example, the sea had to move, or the different shots of the sea were models, quite big, like 1.5, 2 meters. So we had to place them, and they had to create all the background. And of course, the idea of the chapters was there already. We had the shots. We had to find the right shot of Bella to be put there. But all the other elements, of course, they were there, like the brain or whatever other elements. We combined them in the edit just simply, and then send them to be worked properly with VFX people.
I believe I read an interview where you mentioned that Yorgos gives you music ahead of time, like a bin of music to work with.
It's true. I mean, in our previous film, like up to The Favorite, we used classical music. We didn't have a composer. This time, this Poor Film was the first time he used music from Jeskin, and on our next film as well. And the music was composed 8 months before shooting started. So the themes were there, right? So, of course, at the point when we progressed a lot in our edit, I don't use it from the beginning because it distracts you, takes you different places. You don't need that so early. You need to focus on the performances, on the pace without music. And then music comes, and of course, it's the time when we somehow deconstruct the film. We break it apart, and music can help us to do that, to give us the pace. Like, for example, in the scene where Godwin Baxter, again, I mentioned the same scene, explains to Max the situation. The pace of the presentation is a combination of the dialogue, the way he recites, and the music as well, and that makes the shots, the length of the shots. Of course, the themes were there, which meant that sometimes we edit the music to fit to the particular situation, and then we change music. For example, in the same scene, we had the same theme played differently. So the second time we had to edit it like it was. Sometimes, of course, it doesn't work perfectly, but then we send it to Jeskin and say, okay, this is what it is, and okay, this is the themes. Work on that, and it was a pretty clever way to work, because you can edit the music, you can add meters, you can subtract meters, you can punctuate something with the music, editing the music as well as the picture. And yes, but of course, in the end, it has to be sent back to Jaskin, and then he refines it somehow. The idea, though, it's there. Themes are there.
Earlier, you mentioned a scene, one of my favorite scenes from the film. That's the dance fight sequence in Lisbon. For something like that, which feels highly choreographed, does Yorgos give you storyboards or animatics or any kind of previs to start building that? Or is that literally just you and the footage?
It's literally me and the footage, as a matter of fact. Of course, the idea is there. I can say it. Like, for example, it's one of his trademarks. We had it in DOGTOOTH, we had it in The Favorite as well, but the edit is different. If you remember, in Favorite, we had this long shot traveling towards the face of the queen. We didn't intercut. We didn't want to create, a dancing choreography, of course, but it was a separate thing. On this one, it had to be from the point of view of Bella Baxter. She suddenly feels exuberant. She wants to go out and dance, and she does crazy things. So the edit had to follow her movement, and also the idea of the choreography was there, of course, but it had to be concentrated on the fight between them. It's like a microcosm of the whole film. Somebody tries to control her, and she reacts. Right, so that's why all these movements, we had to break down the choreography, as a matter of fact, because the first edit I remember I did was nicely done. All the around people were dancing fantastically, but we missed the point, which was Bella Baxter and him fighting over who is in control. She's very aggressive in the end. She throws a glass of water on him and cut directly to them kissing, which, it creates these changes of moods, which are very, sometimes surprise the audience or their excitement.
Duncan Wedderburn, played by Mark Ruffalo, very funny, terrific performance, but knowing when to play up the comedy versus the drama, because there's some very dark times for Bella in this movie. I'd like to know about the challenge for you as an editor working with Yorgos to make sure that tonally the movie is correct.
It's true. It's always a big challenge to balance all these different emotions in all of his films. I think this one was not so difficult as the other ones, although Bella goes through a lot of phases, but we had to be true to this character, and also, there's mainly a positive feeling. Even the dark feelings are not so dark as our other films. Bella is has a positive opinion about human beings, although the character played by Carmichael in the boat is very pessimistic and everything. It's not so dark as, let's say, Dogtooth or The Killing of a Sacred Deer. It has a lighter tonality which agrees to her character, because she's always pure, and she experiences even when she goes to the bordello, she's experiencing things. As a matter of fact, it's not a dark feeling for her. I think the more characteristic shot was when she's being made love by the butcher, which is a mixture of fear but also have pleasure in that. So it's always mixed to her, because she's she's a stoic, as a matter of fact. At that moment, she just experiences things as they come. She doesn't react with beforehand opinion about them. She just takes the bad things. Even when she comes back from Alexandria and she's on bed and, she's crying, I laughed a lot, because she's so great when she recites all these things that, what can I do about people? It's all the money and everything. She's a bit between them. She's fantastic in all these changes or the mood she's expressing.
I was surprised, I don't know why, when you said that Yorgos has a lot of improv in this film. Do you like that, and that it gives you a lot of choice to work with, or is it a little more challenging in that it's harder to find exactly where to take the story?
No, I like it. I like it because, you have all these opportunities, and we do go through all these stages in the edit. Of course, we know that at some point we have to take out things or to eliminate things or to do the pace differently. but it's a way for us as well to discover the inner core of the film. And, in the end, keep just the parts that will say the story simply and without making the audience lag behind us. We like to be with the audience. We like him to understand all the things that are happening, and specifically on these films to enjoy the present. Film is an art of the present all the time. We have to make sure that he is with us at that point and the audience enjoys and understands what is happening. Also, of course, some time to give him time to think about these things, about what is it that keeps us from experiencing simply what is happening. What is it? And, there are all these things, but they're not so they don't interfere at the moment from what's happening. It's something that you think about it afterwards, I guess, in this film.
So I already told you what my favorite scene from the film was. Do you have a favorite scene from the film?
Yeah, I mean, I like also the dance a lot. I like the scene when Godwin Baxter reveals the story of Bella Baxter to Max, or this intercutting. The Alexandria scene as well, although it was not the edit that was important. There were so many nice things to watch and be absorbed by in this film. So,
It's like asking which kid is your favorite.
Right, yes. I mean, even scenes that we had to take out, they were fantastic, but we had to take them out. It was so great to be a part of this experience of having to follow this character from a baby to a grown-up woman. So all this procedure was very important to me.
So looking at it a different way, what was your biggest editorial challenge on this film?
I think to keep the spirit of pureness and enjoyment of Bella Baxter. Like, for example, her scenes that are a bit more explicit, or we didn't want them to feel like it was. We had to find a way to be truthful to what we saw, but also not for people to feel puritanical about it. We were trying to make them feel the simplicity of being naked or enjoying, what life brings you, even if it's a sexual thing or a bad thing or a cry. That was the biggest challenge, was to make the viewer feel exactly as Bella Baxter does. But in that sense, there is no character you can be based on a previous character. This is something new. So it had to be done in a way that the audience had to be persuaded and let prohibitions fall and enjoy it as it comes. That was the biggest challenge.
You just did a film with Phaedon Papamichael directing. Most people know of his work as a cinematographer, but he also directs from time to time. Has your extensive experience as an editor ever given you any desire to be a director?
Not at all. I mean, I was consciously from the time of my film school an editor. I started in London Film School. Even from the first semester, I was an editor, and everybody saw me as an editor, and I saw myself as an editor, basically because my idiosyncrasy, I'm not so easy with a lot of people around me.
Well, as a fan of your work, I'm glad you stuck with editing, and I hope you keep doing it.
As much as I can, yes, of course. But I see my peers working in their old age, and I'm happy. I hope I can do it for the next 10 years.
I don't know. I still think Yorgos would make a pretty good director. Why not? The other Yorgos did. No matter. We should all be happy that Yorgos Mavropsaridis chose a career in editing. We should even be happier that he talked to us today about Poor Things. I am. Thank you, Yorgos, for calling in and giving us the old Grecian formula on how to make a great movie. Poor Things is out in theaters right now in the US and will be soon in other parts of the world, so check your local listings for showtimes. There isn't much time left in this season of giving, so get going on giving a gift to that special editor in your life, especially if that editor is you. Let's be honest, 80% of the time you go looking for a gift for somebody else, you end up getting one for yourself. Or maybe that's just me. In any case, Avid Media Composer would make for a wonderful gift, and it's the gift that keeps on giving because new features and functionality are added all the time. Don't believe me? Well, see for yourself. Just click that little link in the show notes that will take you to the Media Composer page on avid.com. Say, while you're in a link-clicking kind of mood, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. Not everyone that listens is subscribed. Sometimes it works that way. And also make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel while you're at it. There are links in the show notes for both of those. And I'll tell you, I just put a really cool timeline tour up there with Eddie Hamilton, showing you how he put together Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. And with that, I reckon it's time we part. I gotta go. You have a great week, and I will see you back here next Monday. Until then, this is Matt Fury, thanking you for joining me right here on The Rough Cut.